My fiancé left me for the neighbor's daughter, but his father secretly rewrote his will, leaving everything to me. My fiancé abandoned me for the neighbor's daughter, but his father secretly modified his will due to his disgust with his son's behavior. I, a 28-year-old female, can't believe I'm writing this. I've been gazing at my laptop for hours, trying to make sense of what happened. I met James, 30 male, at a tech company 5 years ago. I had recently moved to Boston for a job after finishing college in Seattle. James worked in product development while I was in marketing. He was charming, successful, and appeared great. We started as pals. James would converse at my work during coffee breaks, and we finally had lunch together. 6 months later, he asked me out on a date. I was apprehensive about office connections, but he made them seem natural. We dated for 3 years before becoming engaged. I became close to his parents, Tom, 58 male, and Sarah, 55 female, who treated me like a daughter. They had no other children, and Sarah was overjoyed to gain a daughter. Their beautiful historic home, passed down through generations, became the setting for our Sunday family dinners. During one of these dinners, James proposed with his grandmother's ring, and Sarah presented me with a family necklace as a formal welcome. The wedding planning process was flawless. James' parents insisted on donating, despite the fact that my family was already covered. Sarah assisted with everything, from dress fittings to decor, and bonded with my mother. Everything felt wonderful in the week leading up to the wedding. James appeared excited, so we arranged a honeymoon to Europe, which his parents generously offered us. At the rehearsal dinner, James delivered a moving speech about our future. Sarah hugged me, proud of having me as her daughter-in-law. Tom appeared emotional, despite his reserved demeanor. On the wedding day, as I was getting ready, James' best man arrived, visibly apprehensive. He handed me a message from James, stating he couldn't do it and wanted time to think things through. I called James, but his phone was turned off. His best man admitted that James had left early in the morning. The aftermath was chaotic. My parents rushed to cancel everything. James' parents were stunned. Sarah attempted to reach him, but Tom looked glum, almost unsurprised. I sat in my wedding dress for hours, devastated. The guests were sent home, and all we had prepared went to waste. My parents wasted thousands in non-refundable deposits. 2 days later, when I was still in bed, a friend sent me an Instagram screenshot. James had shared a photo with Kelly, 26 female, a neighbor's daughter who resided 3 homes down from his parents. They were obviously together, looking happy and comfortable in what appeared to be her residence. Kelly had always been there at family functions because she lived so near to James's parents. The caption said, "Sometimes the right path isn't the easy one." I never noticed that she frequently joined us for Sunday dinners with her parents. She was constantly nice, inquiring about the wedding plans and even offering to assist with the arrangements. Now I understand why she was so interested in the details. I found out from common friends that James and Kelly had been seeing each other behind my back for months. They apparently became close after she joined the local tennis club where James played. They had been practicing early in the morning before going to work. What hurts more than James' betrayal is his parents' reaction. Instead of being furious with him, they embraced his new relationship. Sarah called me a week after the wedding catastrophe, not to apologize or check on me, but to explain why I shouldn't be upset with James' decision. She claimed Kelly was a better match for James because her family had connections in the computer world. Kelly's father had a thriving software company, and James was certain to receive a sizable share of the family business one day. Sarah had the nerve to imply that, while they liked me, they needed to consider James's future, and Kelly could provide him with better prospects. She noted that sometimes parents must support their children's decisions, even if they appear harsh to others. The mother who had cried with excitement when I announced my engagement and helped me arrange every detail of my wedding was suddenly acting as if I were simply a stepping stone on her son's journey to prosperity. Then came an unexpected twist. James' father's attorney phoned me 2 weeks after the wedding. Tom updated his will 2 months before the wedding. The lawyer indicated that Tom saw through James' actions and was repulsed by them. He gave me documents demonstrating that Tom had left everything, the family business, properties, and investments, to me rather than James. This was done in secret without anyone's knowledge, including Sarah. When I questioned the lawyer why Tom would do this, he explained that he had been seeing James' behavior shift over the previous year. He hired a private investigator to investigate some of his suspicions. The lawyer brought me a letter Tom had written to explain everything. Tom had learned James' tendency of exploiting others to his advantage, and was ashamed of the guy his son had become. The letter stated that he observed how sincere and hardworking I was, and believed I would be a better steward of the family legacy than his own son. I have not notified anyone about the will yet, even my parents. James and his mother still believe he's going to inherit everything. I'm simply trying to digest everything, while watching them enjoy his new relationship with Kelly, as if nothing happened. Sarah publishes images of them together on Facebook, expressing her joy that her son has discovered his true love. The toughest part is witnessing my almost mother-in-law, who I assume loved me like a daughter, act as if I never existed. Update 1. The last 2 weeks have been an absolute disaster. Just when I thought things couldn't get much worse, I discovered new lies and betrayals that made my head spin. Yesterday, I learned that James's parents mortgaged their historic family house shortly after our engagement. They took out a large debt, since James promised to help them with payments after he received his inheritance. Sarah was so sure about James's future with Kelly's family that they not only mortgaged the house, but also took out additional loans to refurbish it and purchase a vacation home on Cape Cod. Sarah had been gloating to my mother about their restoration plans during the wedding preparations, which led me to this discovery. My mother mentioned this to me while we were sorting through wedding gifts that needed to be returned. Curious about how they could afford such expensive upgrades, I inquired. One of Tom's colleagues informed me about the mortgage predicament, stating that he had cautioned Tom against it. But it isn't the most devastating part. Emily, one of my bridesmaids who works at the wedding venue, visited me yesterday. She seemed uneasy and admitted to withholding something from me. She disclosed that James' parents had known about his intention to abandon me at the altar for weeks. They didn't just know, They actively helped him plan the entire affair. Emily overheard Sarah talking about the idea with the venue planner 3 weeks before the wedding. Sarah inquired about their cancellation policy and whether they might receive a partial refund if the wedding was called off at the last minute. The coordinator noticed something weird and told it to Emily, but they assumed it was just an anxious mother-in-law being meticulous. Sarah and James had planned this for more than a month. They continued to encourage me to spend more on deposits that they knew would be lost. Sarah even persuaded me to enhance the floral arrangements 2 days before the wedding. Knowing full well that her son would not attend, she assisted me in selecting additional decorations and even suggested that I purchase a more expensive wedding gown, all while being aware of their plans. The more I study, the worse I feel. They sat there at family meals, assisted with wedding preparations, and claimed to be enthused about our future together, all the while preparing to embarrass me in front of everyone I know. I visited with Tom's lawyer again yesterday, and he revealed even more frightening details concerning James. This was not his first experience doing something like this. The lawyer provided me documentation of James's previous engagements to 2 other women. Both engagements ended in identical ways, with James leaving for someone he believed would be more advantageous to his future. The first was Rachel, his college sweetheart. They were engaged during their senior year until James met a tech executive's daughter at a career fair. He ended their engagement by email and began dating the executive's daughter a week later. That romance ended when he found she was not as close to her father as he had imagined. The second person was Amanda, who worked at his first job. They were engaged for 6 months until James learned that her family's business was faltering. He left her for a woman whose father served on the board of a major firm. That romance also failed when the woman's father expressed his disapproval of James. Tom had been gathering this material for several months. He engaged a private investigator who discovered James's practice of exploiting women for social and financial benefit. This research is what prompted Tom to change his will. The lawyer showed me images, emails, and text messages proving James had been plotting to leave me since he met Kelly at the tennis club. But today provided the biggest surprise. Kelly arrived at my apartment crying. She discovered messages on James' phone while he was showering. The communications revealed that James was already chasing Emily, her wealthy cousin who was destined to inherit her family's multi-million-dollar technology company. Emily evidently visits from California every summer, and James had planned to meet her on her next visit. Kelly was devastated. She showed me all of the texts, including talks between James and Sarah, that criticized Kelly and myself. They referred to us as stepping stones along James's route to achievement. Sarah even recommended specific strategies for James to acquire Emily's trust, such as using his friendship with Kelly. The communications also revealed that Sarah had suggested James join the tennis club where Kelly played, knowing they'd meet there. She had planned the entire event, from fostering their friendship to arranging early morning practice sessions where they could meet without my knowledge. Since Kelly left James, Sarah has been phoning me non-stop. She's probably hoping to persuade me to accept James back after his plan with Kelly went through. Every time she called, I let it go to voicemail. Her texts have shifted from nasty to desperate, imploring me to speak with her. She has no idea about the will, nor do I know about their role in destroying my wedding day. The lawyer recommended that I keep my fortune a secret for the time being. There are still some legal steps to go through, and he believes it is best if James and Sarah are unaware of the will until it is finalized. He's scared they'll try to contest it if they find out too soon. Kelly and I talked for hours today. She profusely apologized for her role in everything, claiming she had no knowledge of James's background or plans to pursue her cousin. She believed he had fallen in love with her and abandoned me because of his sentiments. Finding those notes made her realize she was merely a piece in his game. I am still processing all of this information. Every day seems to reveal something new about the folks I thought I knew and trusted. According to the lawyer, we should have all of the inheritance documentation in order within a few weeks. Until then, I'm simply trying to keep my head above water, while resisting the impulse to reveal everything I know about James and his mother. Update. This week, everything detonated in the worst conceivable way. James' parents learned about the inheritance predicament during a meeting with their bank. They were attempting to obtain another loan using the family business as collateral for further house upgrades. The bank notified them that they no longer possessed any rights to the company or its assets. Sarah appears to have had a total collapse right in the bank. Sarah arrived at my workplace, screaming. She got past security by claiming to be my mother-in-law and started causing a commotion in the middle of the workplace. She raged at me for manipulating Tom and stealing their family legacy. My coworkers had to summon security to remove her, but not before she informed everyone that James had abandoned me at the altar. I had been keeping it quiet at work, telling everyone that the wedding had been postponed. After Sarah's outburst, James began phoning and messaging nonstop. His messages alternated between begging pardon and accusing me of wrecking his family. He stated he made a tremendous mistake by leaving me and that he still loved me. According to him, Kelly meant nothing, and he only left because he was afraid of commitment. This dramatic change of heart occurred shortly after Kelly moved out, and his efforts to contact her cousin Emily had failed terribly. Kelly informed me that Emily had laughed when James attempted to ask her out. She had already learned everything about him from Kelly and alerted their entire extended family about his actions. James is now unable to access the family business that he was so interested in. Tom eventually ended his quiet this week. He organized a family meeting at his place, inviting Kelly's parents, who had been close family friends for years. Tom revealed everything, including the private investigator's findings, James' pattern with his ex-fiancées, and Sarah's role in allowing his behavior. He explained why he had modified his will, providing everyone the information he had obtained about James and Sarah's scheme. Sarah burst into tears when Tom told her that their home will be foreclosed in a matter of weeks. They had taken out numerous loans, banking on James' fortune to pay them off. They were now drowning in debt, unable to make their payments. Their flawless plan had gone totally wrong. James attempted to explain himself, claiming that he was under pressure from his mother to find someone affluent. Tom pulled out printed copies of James' messages to Sarah, revealing that he had boasted about influencing both Kelly and myself. There were communications discussing how he intended to exploit Kelly's family ties to meet Emily, and how he had estimated how much he might profit from each relationship. The most alarming discovery was that Sarah had produced thorough spreadsheets comparing the possible financial benefits of James being with me, Kelly, and Emily. She had kept track of everything, including our family income and possible business contacts. Kelly's father was upset when he discovered this, especially since Sarah was one of his wife's closest friends. James' parents had been pleading with me for forgiveness since the bank began the foreclosure process. Sarah sends lengthy emails describing how she was simply trying to be a good mother and got carried away with wanting the best for her baby. She promised a public apology and even proposed revealing everything to my parents. James took a different strategy. He came up at my place last night with his grandmother's ring, which I had returned following the botched wedding. He urged that we get back together and solve things. He suggested we operate the family business jointly and help his parents keep their home. He appeared to have entirely forgotten that he had humiliated me and plotted everything with his mother. I did not let him in. I spoke with him through the door and warned him to leave before I called the police. He became enraged, accusing me of being cruel and heartless, of ripping his family apart over a single mistake, one that he and his mother had planned months in advance. It had cost my family thousands of dollars in wedding deposits, while also humiliating me in front of everyone I knew. Tom called me thereafter to apologize for James's appearance. He stated that he is working with his lawyer to obtain a restraining order against both James and Sarah to protect me. Kelly's father is also assisting, using his contacts to ensure James cannot find another job in the IT business in our area. It's a tiny consolation to know that there are still nice people in this mess. Update 2. After months of legal back and forth, the inheritance has finally been settled. I used a portion of it to launch a profitable branch of the family firm focused on sustainable technology solutions, which Tom had always wanted to pursue, but Sarah and James had resisted. Tom has been a great mentor throughout this process, teaching me everything I need to know about the business and connecting me to all of his industry contacts. James attempted to dispute the will in court, saying that I misled his father when he was mentally sick. That backfired dramatically when all of his previous actions were used as proof. The private investigator Tom hired testified about James' pattern with his ex-fiancées, and Rachel and Amanda stepped forward to tell their stories. The judge not only dismissed James' claim, but also ordered him to pay all legal costs. James's parents had to leave their family home last month. They now reside in a small rental flat on the outskirts of the city. Sarah still attempts to reach out on occasion, usually after drinking too much. Her messages alternate between asking pardon and accusing me for wrecking their life. I've blocked her phone number, but she keeps using new email addresses to reach me. James struck rock bottom when Kelly's father exposed his actions to the whole world. He had to take an entry-level customer service position at a tiny company outside of town. Last I heard, he was still living with a roommate and working for Uber on weekends to make ends meet. He attempted to apologize to Kelly's family in the hopes of re-establishing those links, but they refused to speak with him. The karma did not end there. Emily, Kelly's cousin, whom James attempted to pursue, ended up dating and just became engaged to Kelly's brother Mark. They now operate the IT firm that James was so interested in, and it is more prosperous than before. Kelly has become a good friend. We meet for coffee on a regular basis and occasionally joke at how we both manage to avoid James' manipulation. Tom has been my staunchest supporter throughout this entire process. He believes that watching me succeed with the company has helped him deal with his disappointment in James. We've grown the business by 40% in just 6 months, and our new sustainable tech segment is attracting the attention of major investors. Tom recently told me that revising his will was the best decision he'd ever made. I've utilized a portion of my fortune to establish a foundation that assists those who have been financially harmed by broken engagements. We reimburse lost wedding deposits and give legal assistance when needed. Rachel and Amanda now work with the foundation, sharing their story to help others recognize the warning signs we all overlooked with James. Following James's unsuccessful challenge to the will, the court issued an order prohibiting him from having any involvement in the family firm or charity indefinitely. He tried to argue that this was unfair, but given the evidence of his previous actions, the judge was unimpressed. My personal life is currently better than it would have been if I had married James. I've started dating again, but I'm taking things cautiously. My parents are proud of how I've handled everything, and watching the company prosper under my leadership has helped them move over their resentment over the wedding tragedy. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if James had been honest from the start. But then I recall what Tom told me. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are actually blessings in disguise. He was correct. Losing James inspired me to discover my own strength, pursue a great career, and create something significant to benefit others. That is worth more than any wedding could have been. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. After 2 months selling home to travel, my sister and her husband want to live with me, rent-free, for 10 months. Am I the asshole for refusing them? So, I, 32 male, own a modest 3-bedroom house that I've been paying off for the last 10 years. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine, and I'm proud of it. My sister, 29 female, and her husband, 31 male, are the typical free-spirited types. They've always talked about quitting the rat race, living life to the fullest, all that. Well, a few months ago, they finally did it. They sold their house during a booming market, thinking the profit would fund a year-long break to travel. They believed they could stretch the money by traveling cheaply, staying in hostels or Airbnbs, and getting by with occasional odd jobs. At first, they stayed in nicer places and ate out a lot, thinking they had plenty of cushion. But within 2 months, they were out of money. They underestimated how quickly expenses would pile up, especially with 2 young kids, 7 female and 5 male, to feed and care for. Now that their funds are drained, they've decided to stop full-time travel but don't want to settle down yet. Instead, they asked to live with me, rent-free, for the next 10 months while they figure things out. They say they'll still try to take some occasional trips if they find super cheap deals, but for the most part, they want to stay at my house. I told them no. My house isn't big enough. I don't want the disruption, and I certainly don't think it's fair for them to live off me because their plan failed. I offered to help them find an affordable rental or even cover part of their expenses for a couple of months so they could get back on their feet. But that wasn't enough. My sister blew up at me, calling me selfish and accusing me of being jealous of their adventurous lifestyle. To make it worse, my parents are siding with her, saying that family should help the family and that I'm being too rigid. The thing is, My parents live in a small apartment and can't take in my sister's family, which is probably why they're pushing it on me. They say I don't understand the value of experiences and that I should be more supportive. Some of our mutual friends are also saying I should be more understanding. But I think it's completely unreasonable to expect me to house their whole family for nearly a year just because they didn't plan properly. Am I an asshole? Am I the jerk for kicking out my sister's boyfriend after he rejected the dinner I spent hours cooking? Original post, September 15th, 2024. So here's what happened. I, 28, invited my sister, 25F, and her boyfriend, 26M, over for dinner. I love cooking and have spent hours preparing this fancy meal. Homemade pasta, a slow-cooked ragu, a salad, and a tiramisu for dessert. I was really proud of it and excited to have them over. When they arrived, everything was fine at first. We sat down, and I started serving the food. Her boyfriend, let's call him Steve, stared at the pasta for a moment, then looked at me and said, "I don't eat carbs." At first, I thought he was joking, but nope, he was dead serious. He goes on about how he's super into keto, and carbs are the enemy. Okay, fine. That's his choice. But when I offered to make him a salad or something else on the spot, he refused and said that I should have known about his diet beforehand. This is where it gets weird. He then pulls out a small Tupperware container from his bag, filled with what looked like boiled chicken and broccoli, and starts to eat it at my dinner table, while the rest of us are trying to enjoy the meal I spent hours making. I was stunned and, honestly, kind of insulted. I told him it was rude to bring his own food without mentioning it to me beforehand, and he should have at least given me a heads up. He then goes off about how people need to respect his dietary choices, and that I was being controlling by not accommodating his needs. At this point, I'd had enough. I told him, if you can't eat what's served and won't even let me make something else, then maybe you should just get out. He stood up, said something like, "I'm just trying to be healthy," grabbed his Tupperware and walked out. My sister stayed for a bit, but eventually left too, saying I overreacted. Now my sister's mad at me, saying I embarrassed her boyfriend and made them both feel unwelcome. My mom thinks I should apologize, but my friends are on my side, saying Steve was being incredibly rude. AITA for telling him to get out. Obo peas. Comment top comment. Commenter. Your sister didn't give you a heads up about his diet. Whoopee, honestly, no, she didn't. I'm not sure she even knew how serious he was about the whole keto thing, because she never mentioned it. She eats pretty much anything, so I assumed he was the same. But even if she had, I feel like it still would have been polite for him to at least say something beforehand, instead of just showing up with his own meal. I would have happily made something keto-friendly if I had known. There is no consensus bot on AITA, but top comments were nay what else would 6 days later. Well, y'all, buckle up, because things have escalated in a way I never expected. After my initial post, I figured things would calm down once my sister had time to cool off. Spoiler alert, they did not. So the day after I told Steve to leave, my sister texted me saying they want to talk things through at a family dinner. I assumed it would be just the three of us, maybe at a neutral restaurant, where we could hash it out like adults. Nope. Instead, my sister invites my parents, my brother, and Steve's parents to this dinner at my parents' house, turning it into some kind of weird intervention. I show up thinking it'll just be a casual conversation, but the moment I walk in, Steve's mom, let's call her Carol, is already going off about how Steve has always had special dietary needs, and how people who care about him should respect his boundaries. The woman acts like the guy has a life-threatening allergy, not a trendy diet. My mom is sitting there looking super uncomfortable, while my dad's just quietly sipping his beer, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. So Carol starts listing off Steve's dietary restrictions, and she's acting like I personally offended the whole keto community by serving pasta. Then brace yourselves. Carol pulls out a folder. Yes, a literal folder, with printouts. She hands one to me, one to my mom, and one to my dad. I'm flipping through this thing, and it's full of Steve's dietary guidelines, suggested meal plans, and even a list of keto-friendly restaurants we could go to in the future. At this point, I'm doing everything I can not to laugh, but it gets worse. Steve pipes up and says he's willing to forgive me for disrespecting his lifestyle if I agree to host a redo dinner where I follow his dietary restrictions to the letter. He says this will prove I'm serious about making amends and respecting his needs going forward. I thought he was joking, but no. He was dead serious. He even pulled out his phone to show me some keto recipe apps that I might find helpful. I was in total shock. My sister, by the way, said absolutely nothing during all of this, just staring at her plate like she wanted to disappear. My mom, bless her, tries to smooth things over by suggesting we all just eat whatever we want when we're together. But Carol snaps. It's not that simple. She says that in their family, they all follow keto together. And that's why Steve is so passionate about it. At this point, I've had enough. I stood up and said, "Look, I'm not redoing the dinner. I'm not making anyone a special keto feast. If Steve can't eat what I cook, that's fine. But bringing his own meal to my dinner without even telling me was disrespectful. And I'm not apologizing for feeling that way." And then, this is where it gets absolutely bonkers. Steve's dad stands up, points at me, and says, "This is exactly why Steve doesn't trust women to understand him. They always make it about themselves." The whole room went silent. My dad finally spoke up, saying, "I think it's time for you all to leave," and started walking toward the door, basically escorting Steve's parents out. Steve and my sister stayed behind. But Steve was furious. He started yelling about how families should support each other and then accused me of trying to sabotage their relationship because I'm jealous of what they have. At that point, I just walked out and left the whole mess behind. Here's the kicker though. A couple of days later, my sister called me and told me she and Steve were taking a break because she needed time to think. Apparently, this whole keto fiasco was the last straw in a long list of controlling behavior from Steve. She didn't realize just how bad it was until the whole family saw it play out at dinner. She even told me that Steve had been trying to get her to follow his diet for months, but she was hiding snacks in her car just to get a break from all the keto madness. So now, Steve's gone full radio silent. My sister is staying with me for the time being. And I'm still getting passive-aggressive texts from Carol about how hurt Steve is and how he's just misunderstood. Honestly, I'm just glad my sister is finally seeing how controlling this guy was. Told her. Steve's keto obsession led to a full-blown family intervention where his mom handed out dietary guidelines. And now my sister is taking a break from him because she realized how controlling he is. After abandoning us for his online girlfriend and vanishing for 8 years, my husband suddenly reappears with an offer to rejoin our lives. I, 40, would want everyone's perspective since I'm unsure about a recent choice I made for my family and am feeling mixed about. My world went upside down 8 years ago when Robert, my husband, abruptly said he was leaving the children and me. Online, he had met a woman and developed feelings for her. His choice came out of nowhere and rocked me. For weeks, Robert had been acting distant and unusual, but I had written off his behavior as stress due to his job. After more than 10 years of marriage, we stayed by each other through thick and narrow. I had never given infidelity any thought. Robert said at last one evening that he had met someone. Those words tore at my heart. He shouted out that the woman, Isabella, was the hottest woman he had ever seen. Her name's having spent the past 3 months in conversation with her. He developed a relationship that led him to see he was dissatisfied in our marriage. Every word he said sliced right through me like a knife. In my stomach, I felt a whirl of wrath mixed with hopelessness. Though he couldn't hide his affections for Isabella, he kept reassuring me he still loved us. He claimed he had to visit her personally to find out whether it would go anywhere. A whirl of feelings swamped me, and I couldn't make sense of what was happening. Our house seemed as though its walls were squeezing in on me. As I questioned him whether he was leaving us and the kids for this woman, my voice faltered. He nodded hesitantly, stating he had to do this for himself, even if he wasn't sure I would grasp. Having given it a lot of thought, he was scheduled to meet her and begin a fresh life. He advised me he was prepared to help us financially as much as he could, but he had to follow his heart and satisfy the love of his life. All around me, the world collapsed. It still astounded me that my husband was leaving our children and me for someone he had never personally known. Screaming, pleading, doing anything to get him to remain came first. But from his countenance, I realized he had already decided what to do. There was no reverse. Robert left us to tell our kids their father wouldn't be returning, moving out the next week. At 9 years old, Emily asked 1,000 questions, but I knew no responses. Just 4 years old at the time, Nathan clung to me as though he felt something was badly wrong and struggled to really understand the gravity of the situation. During this period, I felt numb and broken. My children were the only thing keeping me from drowning in my grief. When I first told my family about Robert, they responded exactly like me. They simply couldn't comprehend why on earth my husband of so many years would do something like this. Although my parents encouraged me to pursue this legally, at the time in my life, I lacked much to inspire me. I still thought my spouse would return to us. When Robert's parents learned their son had left us, they looked completely devastated and powerless. He repeated the same narrative, even though they begged him to come back over several calls. Days finally stretched into weeks, then weeks into months. I was left to gather the fragments for the kids, as well as for my benefit. Around us, our family and friends came together to provide encouragement and a sympathetic ear. Though the hurt of my husband's betrayal persisted, I concentrated on securing a job so Emily and Nathan would have a steady home. Robert's parents were quite helpful during this period. They provided financial support and watched the children whenever I needed a break. 8 years have gone by, and Robert's only remembrance in our life now is a far-off one. Apart from that, he never contacted the children or me. He used to send us money on occasion. Over the years, I have essentially turned into a single mother, working non-stop to raise her kids and give them the love and care they so richly deserve. Emily stopped attempting to get in touch with her father and learned not to bring him up, even though she thought about him sometimes. Nathan never even mentioned him, since his memory was so much hazier. Though it hurts to lose their father, they have both grown up to be amazing people. Robert's father died suddenly not so long ago. We all went to his funeral. His family attorney later told us he wanted to speak with me about his will. Robert's father had left some money for his grandkids, the lawyer said. Though it wasn't much, it may assist pay for my children's college tuition. Sitting with my kids, I told them the news they wouldn't have to worry about college costs going forward. Their smiles radiated delight, and seeing their contentment was quite lovely. Knowing that after such a protracted period of uncertainty, we have one less worry on our plate, felt like a weight has been taken off. I got a call last week, from a number I don't know. Unbelievably, Robert was on the other side of the line. After 8 years I was speechless to hear his voice, and felt a flood of contradictory feelings. He paused, then said he wanted to see me right away. I begged him to clear me since I was perplexed. He kept requesting to meet me, and said he wanted to talk to me about an offer. Why he was phoning now after so many years of silence eluded me. His continuous calls were hard to ignore, hence I paused to collect my ideas and at last decided to meet with him, though warily. The meetup was scheduled, and we agreed to meet close to my workplace in a cafe. A rush of questions and uncertainty swept over me as I hung off the conversation, making me nervous about seeing him after so many years. I chose not to tell my children anything until after I saw what this offer entailed. The days preceding our planned conference were an emotional roller coaster. In my thoughts, I couldn't help but go back over the years of trying to come to terms with Robert's abandonment, the agony of his abrupt death, and the challenges of raising our children alone. I arrived early on the day of our meeting and anxiously drank my coffee while waiting for Robert. Not long after, he came in, determined but also hesitant, as he approached me. He seemed older, worn, and oddly unlike the man I had married. Our first conversation consisted of awkward pauses and cautious phrases. We sidestepped the elephant in the room, concentrating instead on friendly welcomes and catching up on the years gone by. We seemed to be two strangers negotiating the traces of a former life. Robert eventually plucked the confidence and started to explain why he had suddenly returned into our life. He mentioned how Isabella did not match the woman he had imagined her to be. She was, it turns out, a single mother too, but she had never told him the truth until he had left us and was standing on her doorstep. Their relationship was fraught with difficulties, mostly related to her gambling addiction, which caused her to blow all his money. Although they argued often, Robert had decided to support her since he was reluctant to abandon someone else once more. But he came to see how fleeting life was to remain in a miserable circumstance every day until his father died recently. He talked about how much he missed everyone back home and how let down he felt about the decisions he had taken 8 years ago. Robert went on stating he had considered returning to us several times over the years, but lacked the will to face us. Then he said that his father had left him their large lake house, which we used for vacations before Robert left us. He informed me he wished to sell the house, therefore enabling him to be set for the rest of his life. Quietly nodding, I listened to him. Then Robert delivered a bombshell. He said he wants to return to us and provide our kids with opulent living. If I embraced him back into our life, he reassured me I would never have to work once more. He reassured me we could enjoy the rest of our lives free from financial concerns. But I looked at him with incredulity, using the bequest to create a better life together. Robert basically wanted us to heal and offer our family a second shot. I gave Robert's comments much thought, knowing the possible advantages the inheritance could offer for our family. But it was impossible to forget all the years he had missed, leaving me to look after our kids. Though the concept of financial stability appealed to me, I couldn't overlook the suffering and resentment accumulated over years of his absence. I thus told him quite honestly that although I valued the offer, I couldn't forget the last 8 years. I said I had been juggling job and raising the children alone. Although we may not have everything, we led stable lives, and I cannot risk subjecting my kids and me to suffering once more. I wanted to keep them safe, and wasn't sure if I could ever rely on him not to vanish once more. Desperate, Robert kept begging me to change her mind, but I knew that if I let him back into our life, I would be greatly risking the stability of our family. Though the idea of turning down his offer hurt, especially given the financial comfort it may provide, I couldn't ignore the emotional scars he had left behind. Since my encounter with Robert, my parents have been urging me to change my mind about turning down his offer. They keep reminding me that following everything he has put us through, the least he could do now is provide our children and me a better life free from financial concerns. According to my parents, people may grow, and maybe Robert has seen his faults and wants to really repair our family. They believe I am selfish and want me to put the comfort of my children above my pain. I had been battling my decision late into many sleepless nights. I haven't been able to get myself to share with my kids Robert's comeback, their reaction to the news, and their handling of the concept of their father returning into their life following 8 years of absence worry me. Between the terrible recollections of our past and the possible advantages of taking Robert's offer, I have second-guessed my own judgment. So Reddit, am I the bad guy for turning down Robert's offer and maybe holding my kids and ourselves away from a better life? Update 1. In a few days, people left hundreds of comments and messages for me. That most of you don't believe I'm in the wrong makes me happy. After considering everyone's recommendations, I realized it was time to talk candidly with Robert's kids. Having him resurfaced in their life and shocking them was the last thing I wanted. After supper, I sat Emily and Nathan down today to gently introduce the topic. I started by sharing with them the surprising return of their father and his offer to re-enter our life. Their expressions showed a mixture of uncertainty and interest as they worked to grasp what I was saying. Their responses differed, depending on whether I told them he had inherited the lake house and wanted to sell it to aid us financially. Now 17 years old, Emily displayed a range of feelings, from shock to fury. She couldn't understand why Robert wanted to come back after so many years, and was as perplexed as I was. She remembered the suffering she'd experienced in his absence, even if she also missed her father occasionally. Originally, she said she had missed having a father figure in her life, but she finally learned to live without him, and no longer wanted him back. Now 12 years old, Nathan told us he didn't remember Robert at all, hence he didn't really care about my turning down the offer. He battled to understand the whole ramifications of the circumstances. Since I valued their opinions and feelings, I informed them straightforwardly, whatever they decided would happen. Nathan consented, claiming he was happy with things as they were. Emily said she had absolutely no want to meet him, though the idea of maybe healing our family appealed to me. I knew the scars from the past ran deep, and my children's welfare came first in my mind. Walking away from Robert that day in the cafe was the right decision I made. After that, I meant to discuss the next line of action with my parents. Though he departed before we could proceed with a divorce, I never intended on being married to Robert, against what most people believe. Although I lacked the means to challenge him at the time, I have come to see that there is no reason in keeping married to this man anymore. Update 2. Over the past 2 weeks, Robert's unrelenting calls had grown even more desperate. He kept phoning even after I told him I wanted him gone. Being a non-confrontational person, his persistent attempts to approach me made me feel cornered and emotionally exhausted. I worried he would show up at my place of employment or pay the children visits at the school out of the blue. I was so determined it was time to get in touch with his mother. She looked to be the sole one who could assist me to grasp his motives and handle his unrelenting search, since she knew of his reappearance. I visited with her to let her know I wanted to formally call it quits with him, and to let her know I was annoyed with his continuous calls. His mother explained the true reason behind his tenacity during this talk. She said that when Robert's father left him the lake house, he had included a well-crafted clause. Only if he came back to our family could he become the house owner. I had to sign the paperwork also, to support his claim to the house. This realization stunned and disgusted me. I had last realized why Robert had been following me for several weeks. His main motivation for getting in touch was to get ownership of the house, not a sincere want to atone or reconcile. The whole scenario seemed like a merciless emotional manipulation. Thus, I had to give much thought to my next action. It was time to act after I found Robert's actual goals, especially one based on deception and secrets. I wanted to break out from a relationship. I have begun searching right now for a lawyer to assist with rapid divorce preparation. I have also discussed with my parents, who regret advising me to give his proposition some thought. They are encouraging of my choice to proceed with the divorce, since they now realize he hasn't changed over the years. They are sorry for ever advising me to pay attention to him. I have blocked Robert so he cannot trouble me going forward. When I serve him with divorce paperwork, I want to see him personally. Update 3. My previous update 2 months ago, and now I can at last offer a cheerful one. I reached out to Robert under the guise of meeting since, as I had indicated, I was going to deliver the divorce papers. He signed right away. Emily and Nathan wanted to see their father one final time. They had many questions, and I felt it was important for them to get some closure, despite the hurt of the past. We set up a meeting in a neutral location, a nearby park where we had many joyful family memories before Robert left. While Nathan clutched to my side uneasily, Emily's eyes were full with questions and doubt as she stared at her father. I began by telling him I knew his actual reason for getting in touch after so long. Robert objected that he really wanted us to give him another chance, not only the phrase in his father's will that drove him. Knowing I could not believe another word this man spoke, I shook my head in disgust. We were done. I informed him, and the least he could do to provide our kids some closure was respond to their questions. He nodded quietly. Emily first asked him whether it was worth it to be leaving us for another woman. Robert said he was disoriented and had made a terrible mistake, ashamed looking down. With a more direct approach, Nathan asked him if discovering his happiness came before abandoning his wife and children. Robert inhaled deeply, then said he wasn't thinking well at the time, and acknowledged he was mistaken in leaving us. Strong and perceptive, my children were not happy with only those responses. Saying he was in a midlife crisis, Robert tried to defend his affair. Robert revealed sensitive aspects of his life with Isabella, the challenges they encountered, and his awareness that he had been running after a mirage as the talk went on. Though I doubted Emily and Nathan thought he was credible, they listened carefully. They wanted to know why he had never stayed in touch, and whether he truly regretfully left us. There was agony in the voices of my children. Robert said he had been paralyzed by his own guilt, and had no idea how to deal with the fallout from his behavior. He underlined again that he could give us a luxurious life right now, and that he wanted us to be whole once more. Looking into the eyes of my children, I realized the choice was obvious. They shared my lack of belief. They would not let Robert waltz back into our life, paying money as a temporary repair for the harm he had done. It was a matter of ethics, of defending the courage and resiliency my children and I had displayed over his absence during the preceding 8 years. Resolved, I informed him we had moved past him and we no longer needed his money or him. As he examined the divorce paperwork, I could see a mixture of regret and disappointment. Saying he really wanted to make up for those lost years, he begged me, but I was firm in my decision. Then he told me we could both gain from it if he promised to divide the lake house selling earnings with me. Emily said we didn't need his charity money. And Nathan nodded in agreement, adding we had what we needed to be happy. I suppose Robert started to cry at this moment, as he at last understood what a major error he had made. He continued apologizing to the children, realizing he had made a horrible mistake by abandoning us and knew we could never pardon him. That day, I felt free at last, as I strolled away from the park hand in hand with Emily and Nathan. I had never realized how big of a load I had silently carried for the benefit of my kids. Watching my kids stand up for me and have my back felt great. Our divorce will follow my determination. Though I know it may be some time until I am formally free of him, I intend to take some time off to spend with my kids in between. We have been eagerly awaiting this trip for a long time. Going to Disneyland, to help offset the terrible memories of the past, I want to build lovely memories full of laughter and happiness with my children. I know that we can boldly and resiliently confront whatever the future presents, as long as we have each other. My children and I are on a road toward healing and building a new, solid, and honest life, despite the difficulties and emotional upheaval we have gone through. Though this chapter is far from finished, we will be creating our own story from now on, and I am resolved to make sure it is one full of love, trust, and development. Update 4. I have some fantastic news to share since my previous post. It feels like a major success since I was promoted at my job. It took me some time to get here, but at last, I am making a decent living that will let me give much more for my family. Along with financial stability, the encouragement makes one happy to know that their effort has paid off. The divorce process is running smoothly overall at last. After knowing the background between my husband and me, I have engaged a great attorney who is sure the divorce will go without a hitch. Though it could not be easy, our closure and a fresh start depend on it. Over this period, my family and friends have been at my side offering encouragement. Having more than enough now, I intend to send my kids to therapy. Knowing that my kids can struggle with abandonment, I want them to better manage their feelings and go over any residual worries. After looking at therapists who specialize in handling such problems, I came across a sympathetic and seasoned one who focuses on guiding children and families through challenging emotions. As a parent, meanwhile, I think about encouraging my children to explore hobbies outside of their course of study. Emily, my daughter, spends hours painting exquisite works of art for our house. She has a great gift for it. Nathan, my son, has always been naturally gifted at soccer. We spend our weekends supporting him at his games. Seeing my kids living vibrant lives makes me proud. About Robert, we haven't gotten in touch, and I think it's better to keep it that way. As many of you rightly guessed, one day Isabella, his affair partner, approached me out of the blue. The message was hatred and animosity toward me for purportedly stealing Robert away from her. Not an apology as one would expect from the other woman. She blamed me for their relationship failing and charged me with being the reason he left. Isabella attacked me in her letters, calling me names and leveling cruel charges. She asked me why I had brought Robert back to our family and said I had coached him. The messages were hostile and disturbing, and the degree of her wrath overwhelmed me. This woman had the guts to be upset with me when she was the reason my family split 8 years ago, and it astounded me. I answered her saying I was in the process of divorcing Robert and that I had no want to remain with him. She had no right to get in touch with me, so I reminded her of the suffering and uncertainty our family had experienced when Robert left for her. I underlined how my children had endured, and how our lives had been inverted all those years ago. I made it plain that I never wanted him back, and that she should blame her gambling addiction and herself, if she needed to assign blame. After delivering the message, I blocked her, hopefully preventing her from trying to get in touch once more. I want her to not ruin the quiet life my kids and I have created. Regarding Robert's mother, I do chat to her occasionally since she has always been polite to me. She wants me to do whatever it takes to be happy, and admits her remorse on the way things have gone. Fascinatingly, his mother also stated that the lake house would not be coming to him as his father had intended, since my decision not to reunite with Robert would prevent that. Though it felt right, this discovery surprised me. Robert should pay the consequences, as his self-serving choices had not only destroyed our family, but also hurt another. It is time to step forward and bid the past behind us. Although the road is difficult, the mending process is under active progress. With every day, our future seems more promising as my children are flourishing. Am I the asshole for refusing lunch with my girlfriend's mom to honor my late brother's memorial tradition? Original post, September 20th, 2024, throwaway account. I'm 30, lost my younger brother when I was 22. He had cancer and fought very hard. Ever since, I've been donating blood on the anniversary of his death every year. I take the day off from work, visit his grave, donate blood, and then come home, relax, and watch his favorite movie. I know it's a simple, personal tradition, but it means a lot to me. My girlfriend of 9 months, Anna, 31, asked if I could meet her and her mom for lunch yesterday. I told her no and explained again about what I do on my brother's death anniversary. She got upset and said, "Well, it's my tradition to have lunch with my mom every time she's in town, and she really wanted to see you. You can do your stupid blood donation tradition any day." I explained to her that it's not just about the blood donation. Later in the evening, while I was resting and watching my brother's favorite movie, she texted me again, asking me to join them. I reiterated that I really didn't want to, and would hang out with her mom next time. She replied that I had embarrassed her in front of her mom with my selfishness and laziness. Since then, she's been distant. Do I owe her an apology, Ada? Some of OP's comments. Commenter. Question. Did Anna know about this tradition before her mother came to visit? I'm thinking the answer is yes, because you said explained again, but I wanted to verify this. OP. Yes. I have mentioned it many times before. I think she forgot about the date, so I re-explained that I can't join them that day for that reason. Commenter. TA. She doesn't respect your tradition, which is 1 day a year. Her mom will probably come to town more than 1 time in the year. Your girlfriend is selfish and entitled. OOPS. She is retired and lives 3 hours away. She comes here often. Commenter, your tradition outweighs getting dinner with a visiting relative/in-law. I'm sorry for your loss. I hope you had a good day of remembering him. If I could, what's his face in the movie? OP. There are 2, actually, LOL. The very first, Despicable Me movie in Star Wars, Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Commenter. Have you watched the new one? I see all the movies my dad would have loved to see from the franchises he loved. Ooh. Not yet. I'm planning to watch it with my dad. My mom died when we were kids, and my dad raised us alone. On my brother's birthday. Plan B is having him over for a movie night on my brother's birthday, if the movie will no longer be in movie theaters in December. Commenter. I think you would need to think very carefully about this Geflinlosing. Someone you live with is very hard, and she is very careless with your feelings. Sorry for your loss. I lost my brother when he was 12, and I was 15. Still miss him. OP. My condolences. I miss him a lot. There are certain video games I can't even look at or play anymore because it was our special thing. Commenter. Downvoted. I see plenty of room for doing lunch with your F and her mom, and still commemorating your brother's death on the same day. It would have been easy to fit lunch between visiting a grave, drawing blood, and seeing a movie. You also missed a chance to invite your Effa to partake in your ritual, and instead seem to have just used it as an excuse to not go out with them. You're going to lose a lot more people in life before it's through. I understand death is hard, but it's been nearly a decade. Sometimes clinging to those ancient memories only holds us back. OP. She had never met him. He passed long before my current relationship. She never showed any interest to join, and I wasn't expecting her to join. I mean, if she wanted to, she would be more than welcome to join. I didn't exclude her. My brother's is not some ancient memory. We were very close, and we only had each other growing up as my dad was working a lot. His memory isn't holding me back in anyways. OP comments 1 hour after posting. I texted Anna that we need to talk after reading the comments. I'm going to end it. I don't have her mom's number, unfortunately. OP 3 hours later when asked for an update. Sure. So far, no reply. OP responds to a downvoted commenter. I'm not apologizing. I sent her a text to meet so I can end it. Expecting to have one day out of a year is not too much to ask for. Update. Same post. September 22nd, 2024. 2 days later. I texted her that we needed to talk. She never replied. Just blocked me from everywhere. Social media, WhatsApp. Her best friend who is following me on Instagram blocked me too. I'm not sad. I wanted to end it anyways. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate your kind comments. Some users suggested that my brother/remembrance tradition saved me from getting serious with her in a lifetime of misery, and it made me smile. Thank you again.